Welcome, everyone. We are diving deep today into, well, perhaps the concept that has really shaped Western thought for millennia. Goodness.
Absolutely. We're not just talking about ethics in a narrow sense, are we?
No, not at all. We're looking far beyond personal preference. We're tackling that huge, defining philosophical question: what is fundamentally right? What's truly desirable? What's ultimately worth pursuing?
It's the anchor, really, for morality, for metaphysics, even for how we imagine civic life. It underpins so much of the tradition.
And our mission today is, well, ambitious. A rapid but comprehensive synthesis of this massive idea. We're drawing from a really rigorous analysis found in this Syntopicon essay on goodness.
That's right. For many of these thinkers, understanding goodness wasn't separate from understanding reality itself. We're essentially tracing the lineage of human purpose.
From these very abstract ideals of perfection, right down to the nitty-gritty of how we ought to live together. And just before we jump into that journey, a quick note about how we're doing this analysis. You are actually experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation. It's powered by Google's NotebookLM, designed for, well, a deeper and more dynamic analysis of this book.
We've essentially taken the core arguments from these philosophical giants, synthesized them using this tool, and we're putting them into dialogue for you, hopefully a challenging dialogue.
Right. And this approach is important because the analysis itself, based on Mortimer Adler's principles, deliberately tries to balance different views, sometimes complementary, sometimes, frankly, clashing views on goodness.
It's all about that balance. Our goal here is to give you a high-speed, high-density shortcut, if you will, to understanding these essential, enduring arguments about what it means to be good.
Okay, let's dive in. We really have to start with the foundational split, the one that kind of created the two main paths for Western moral philosophy: Plato's transcendent light versus Aristotle's more earthly purpose.
We absolutely have to begin with Plato, his form of the good. It's the metaphysical anchor for everything that follows, in a way.
Transcendent goodness. What does that really mean in practical terms?
Well, for Plato, goodness isn't just in the world. It's the highest reality, existing outside space and time. It's not just a quality that good things happen to share. It's the very principle that makes them good. Things become good by participating somehow in this perfect eternal form.
That's a concept that can be hard to wrap your head around. But his analogy from the Republic helps, right? The comparison with the sun.
It's crucial. Think about it. The form of the good is, to the intelligible world, the world of pure ideas, eternal truths, what the sun is to the visible world we see around us.
Okay, so the sun lets us see things.
Yes, but it does more, doesn't it? The sun provides the light so we can see, but it also provides the energy for things to grow, to exist, to thrive.
Ah, I see. It's the source of visibility and existence in the physical world.
Exactly. And Plato argues the form of the good does the same for ultimate reality. It's the source of all being, why anything exists at all, and at the same time, the source of intelligibility, why we can understand things as true or good.
Wow. The implication there is just enormous. If goodness is this ultimate reality, separate from our world, then how can a person be good?
The only way, for Plato, is to align your inner self, your soul, with that internal order. This means understanding Plato's view of the soul itself.
Right, the three parts: reason, spirit, and appetite.
Precisely. Justice, for the individual, means achieving psychic harmony. Reason has to be in charge. It must rule over the spirit, our drives, passions, and the appetites, our basic physical desires.
And what guides reason in this?
The contemplation of the form of the good. So goodness isn't found through feelings or physical pleasure. It's discovered through intellectual ascent, kind of turning of the soul towards the highest truth.
Okay, so Plato points us upwards towards the eternal forms, but then his student Aristotle seems to pull our focus right back down to earth.
He really does. This is the shift from the metaphysical anchor to the, let's call it the practical anchor. Aristotle's view is fundamentally immanent, grounded in this world, and teleological.
Teleological meaning purpose-driven.
Exactly. His core definition is the launch pad for so much practical ethics. The good is the telos. The end, the goal, the purpose, the function at which all things aim.
So to find the good of anything, you just ask what it's for. What's its highest function?
That's the method. The good of a knife is to cut well. The good of an eye is to see clearly. The good of a doctor is, well, healing.
All right, so applying that logic to us, to human beings, what's our unique function? Our telos.
With Aristotle, it's eudaimonia. Now, we often translate that as happiness, but it's much richer than that. It means human flourishing, living well, reaching your full potential as a human being over a complete life.
And how do we achieve this eudaimonia? It's not just about feeling good, is it?
Not at all. Crucially, Aristotle says it's achieved through rational activity in accordance with virtue. Since our unique function, what separates us from plants and animals, is reason, the good life is the life lived according to reason, expressed through virtuous action.
And this is where he really differs from Plato's abstraction. Aristotle grounds goodness in practical wisdom. Phronesis, that term seems really important.
Oh, it's absolutely central. Phronesis is that intellectual virtue, that knack for bridging the gap between general moral principles and the messy, concrete situations we face every day.
So it's not just knowing that courage is good.
Right. It's the ability to figure out how to act courageously right here, right now, in this specific situation, finding the mean between being reckless and being cowardly. It's about deliberating well about what's good for you and for the community.
So for Aristotle, good action is about cultivating good habits, virtuous habits, and using reason to guide them. And this all happens within the community.
Yes, within the polis, the city-state. That's crucial. For Aristotle, you can't separate the individual's moral journey from the health of the community. Ethics and politics are intrinsically linked. The good person needs a good society to flourish, and a good society needs good people.
So when we look at Plato and Aristotle side by side, using Adler's approach, they aren't necessarily contradicting each other entirely.
Not necessarily, no. Adler's analysis presents them as complementary, describing two inseparable dimensions of moral reality. Plato gives us the ultimate metaphysical ideal that perfect goodness beyond our world.
And Aristotle gives us the structure for achieving goodness in this world through purpose, reason, virtue, and community life.
Exactly. A really powerful foundation built on Greek reason. And that sets the stage perfectly for the next major development, how these ideas were integrated into a theological framework, starting with Augustine.
Right. Augustine takes Plato's idea of a transcendent good, but fuses it with Christian theology.
He does. For Augustine, goodness isn't just like God or coming from God. Goodness is God. Immutable, all good, the necessary source of all being. Everything that exists gets its reality and its goodness from God alone.
Okay, but if God is perfectly good and the source of everything, that immediately raises the classic problem of evil. How can evil exist in a world created by an all-good God? How did Augustine tackle that?
He tackles it with the concept of privation. It's a clever and very influential move. Evil, for Augustine, isn't a thing in itself. It's not a substance, not a force opposing God.
It's a lack.
It's a lack, exactly, a privation of the good that ought to be there. Think of blindness. It isn't a thing. It's the absence of sight in an eye that should be able to see. Or silence is the absence of sound. Evil is the absence of God's goodness where it should be.
That's profound. But does defining evil as just a lack take away from human responsibility? If I choose to do something bad, isn't that more than just lacking goodness? It feels like an active choice.
That is the persistent philosophical challenge with the privation theory, absolutely. But Augustine's answer focuses on the will. He argues that the choice to do wrong stems from a disordered will when we turn our love away from the ultimate unchanging good, God, and towards lesser changeable goods.
Like loving money or power more than God.
Precisely. The evil that results is the deficiency, the lack of proper order that follows from that disordered choice. So it preserves God's perfect goodness as creator, while still accounting for human freedom and failure through the misdirection of love or will.
So the path to happiness, echoing Plato's ascent in a way, is about orienting our love correctly, directing it towards God, the source of all truth and goodness.
That's the core of Augustinian ethics. Proper love, properly ordered will, leads to true happiness, which is ultimately union with God.
And this sets the stage for Thomas Aquinas, centuries later. He also integrates philosophy and theology, but leans more on Aristotle.
Very much so. Aquinas performs a monumental synthesis, but he builds heavily on Aristotle's systematic teleological framework rather than Plato's more purely idealist one.
He takes Aristotle's idea that everything aims at a purpose, a telos.
Yes, and reframes it completely within a Christian context. All creatures still seek their perfection, their telos, but Aquinas identifies the ultimate final cause, the ultimate perfection for everything, as God himself. God is the ultimate end towards which all creation moves, knowingly or unknowingly.
This blend of Aristotle's reason and Christian doctrine became hugely influential. Scholasticism.
The bedrock of it, yes. And metaphysically, underpinning this view is that really beautiful and critical principle, bonum est diffusum sui.
Bonum est diffusum sui. The good diffuses itself. or spreads itself out.
It's more than just a nice saying. It's a statement about the nature of God and reality. Because God is infinite goodness, his very nature is to communicate, to share, to diffuse that goodness. Creation itself is an act of this diffusion.
So being itself becomes intrinsically linked with goodness.
Exactly. It establishes the convertibility of being and goodness. To the extent that something is, it participates in God's being, and therefore it is also good. This provides a really strong justification for finding the world, nature, inherently good and rationally understandable.
And this convertibility of being and goodness must reinforce the idea that evil can't be a positive substance, right? If being equals good.
Precisely. If God, who is pure goodness, creates all being, he couldn't create substantial evil. It pushes the definition of evil back towards privation, the lack of do good. But where Aquinas really provides structure is on the practical, legal side of things.
Through his theory of law, especially natural law.
Yes, his comprehensive framework, he outlines a hierarchy, starting with eternal law, which is God's rational plan for the entire universe, then divine law, which is revealed through Scripture, then, crucially, natural law.
And natural law is discoverable by human reason.
That's the key. It's that part of God's eternal law that human beings can grasp through their innate reasoning capacity. Things like the inclination to preserve life, to live in society, to seek the truth, to do good and avoid evil. These basic precepts are self-evident to our practical reason.
And human law, the laws governments make, should be based on this natural law.
Ideally, yes. For Aquinas, human law derives its legitimacy from its conformity to natural law, and thus ultimately to God's eternal law. It creates this incredibly coherent system linking metaphysics, ethics, politics, and theology, all grounded in reason's participation in the divine order.
It's an amazing intellectual edifice, built up over centuries, integrating Greek philosophy and Christian theology. But this whole way of thinking, grounding goodness in God or some transcendent reality, was about to face a major challenge.
A revolutionary challenge, really. The modern era brings a decisive break. The conversation shifts dramatically from seeking goodness in the cosmos or in God to locating it within the human being itself, specifically within human reason and will.
And the pivotal figure here is Immanuel Kant. He seems to just set aside all the previous foundations.
He really does represent a profound shift, a turn towards moral autonomy. Kant explicitly rejects defining the good based on consequences, or achieving happiness, or following divine commands, or even fulfilling a natural purpose.
So where does moral goodness reside for Kant?
Exclusively in the goodwill. That's the only thing, he argues, that is good without qualification.
The goodwill, meaning the intention, the motive behind the action.
Precisely. An action's moral worth, for Kant, comes only from the motive of duty, not from the results it produces, not from the feelings it inspires, not from inclinations or desires.
So if I save someone from drowning because I hope to get a reward, or even because I feel overwhelming pity, Kant says that action has no real moral worth.
Correct. It might be praiseworthy in other ways, it might be beneficial, but it's not morally good in the strict Kantian sense. To be morally good, the action must be done from duty, simply because reason tells you it's the right thing to do. The universal moral law demands it.
That seems quite demanding. And maybe a bit cold. It removes emotion entirely from the moral calculation.
It does. It's a morality of pure reason. And the standard for determining our duty is his famous categorical imperative. To really grasp Kant's revolution, we have to understand how this works. It's the mechanism by which reason generates morality from within.
Okay, let's break that down. The categorical imperative. There are different formulations, aren't there?
Yes, typically three main ones are discussed. The first, and most well-known, is the formula of universal law. Act only according to that maxim, whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law.
So before I act, I should ask, could I rationally want everyone to act this way in this situation?
Exactly. Take lying to get out of a difficult situation. Can you rationally will that everyone should lie whenever it's convenient? Kant argues no, because if everyone lied, the very concept of promising or truth-telling would break down. Language itself would become meaningless. So lying fails the universalizability test. It's irrational, therefore immoral.
Okay, that emphasizes consistency. What about the other formulations?
The second is the formula of humanity as an end in itself. Act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means, but always at the same time as an end.
Treat people as ends, never just as means. What does that signify?
It grounds the absolute dignity and worth of every rational being. Because we are rational, autonomous agents capable of setting our own goals, we have intrinsic worth. We can't be used merely as tools or objects to achieve someone else's goals. This is why things like slavery, coercion, or manipulation are fundamentally wrong for Kant. They treat a person as a thing, not a person.
That's a very powerful principle for human rights.
Immensely powerful. And the third formulation, sometimes called the formula of autonomy or the kingdom of ends, emphasizes our role as legislators of the moral law. Act as if you were, through your maxims, a lawmaking member of a kingdom of ends.
Meaning we're both subject to the moral law and, through our rational will, the authors of it.
Precisely. It highlights our moral freedom and responsibility. We're not just following external rules. Our own reason legislates the universal law that we then follow out of duty. Kant creates this complete self-contained system where autonomous reason is the source of goodness, independent of experience, God, or natural inclination.
But again, that potential coldness, that exclusion of empathy, consequence, relationship, it feels like a point of tension.
It's a major point of critique, and it leads directly to the next major challenge. Because this highly rational, duty-based system, itself built upon centuries of thought aiming for objective good, faced its most radical critic in Friedrich Nietzsche.
Nietzsche. He doesn't just critique, he tries to blow the whole thing up, doesn't he? He questions the very value of the traditional concept of goodness.
He absolutely does. Nietzsche performs what he calls a revaluation of all values. He flips the entire classical and Christian paradigm on its head and asks a deeply uncomfortable question. What if everything we've called good for the last 2,000 years is actually unhealthy? What if it's life-denying?
That's explosive. His argument is that our traditional morality, especially Christian morality, didn't arise from strength but from weakness.
That's his core genealogical argument. He distinguishes between two fundamental types of morality, master morality and slave morality.
Okay, let's unpack those. Master morality.
Master morality, for Nietzsche, originates with the strong, the noble, the aristocratic, the powerful individuals. In this system, the masters look at themselves and their own qualities, strength, health, creativity, power, and say, this is good.
So good just means noble, strong, excellent.
Yes. And bad simply means common, vulgar, weak, everything that isn't like them. It's a morality of self-affirmation, of saying yes to life, embracing struggle, and self-overcoming.
And slave morality is the opposite.
It's the inversion, born out of resentment, the resentment and bitterness of the weak, the oppressed, the slaves, towards their masters. Since they couldn't defeat the masters physically, Nietzsche argues, they waged a kind of spiritual revenge.
How? By changing the definition of good.
Exactly. They took the master's values, strength, power, pride, and labeled them evil. And they took their own qualities, humility, pity, patience, obedience, weakness, things born from their situation, and elevated them, calling them good.
So Christian values like blessed are the meek are, for Nietzsche, a symptom of this slave revolt in morals, a revaluation driven by resentment against the strong.
That's his provocative thesis. He saw this slave morality, particularly its Christian form, as ultimately life-denying. It praises weakness, condemns strength, fosters guilt, and turns people away from this world towards a supposed afterlife.
So what does Nietzsche propose instead? What kind of goodness does he value?
He calls for a return to, or creation of, a new good that affirms life in all its aspects, including its suffering and challenges. A goodness that promotes strength, creativity, individual excellence, the will to power, understood as self-mastery and creative drive, and rejects conformity and herd mentality.
He forces a radical re-examination. Is morality about discovering some external truth, or is it about creating values that enhance human life and potential?
Precisely. Nietzsche's critique tests the coherence and, frankly, the health of all the preceding systems. It throws down a gauntlet.
And this line of questioning, this modern focus on human creation of value, doesn't end with Nietzsche. It flows into 20th century thought.
Absolutely. The source material nods to this continuation. Think of existentialism, particularly someone like Jean-Paul Sartre.
Right. Existence precedes essence.
Exactly. There's no pre-given human nature, no divine plan, no objective form of the good. We are thrown into existence and we are radically free. Goodness, then, becomes authentic self-choice, creating value through our commitments.
Which means we're totally responsible. Condemned to be free, as Sartre put it.
A heavy burden, yes.
Yeah.
Every choice you make isn't just for you. You're choosing for all humankind, defining what it means to be human. That's a secularized, radicalized form of Kantian autonomy, perhaps.
And then there's phenomenology. thinking about the other.
Right. Figures like Emmanuel Levinas offer another perspective. Here, the ethical, the good, doesn't arise from abstract principles or self-creation, but from the immediate face-to-face encounter with another person, the other.
So goodness is relational, found in that encounter.
Yes, the other's face makes an ethical demand on me, calls me into responsibility before I even start reasoning about roles or duties. Goodness arises from empathy, from recognizing the vulnerability and infinity in the other. It's a very different starting point, ethics grounded in relation, not just reason or will.
Wow. Okay, so we've journeyed from Plato's transcendent forms through Aristotle's earthly purpose, Augustine and Aquinas' divine order, Kant's duty-bound reason, Nietzsche's radical revaluation, and into these contemporary ideas of choice and relation. That's a lot.
It's an incredible spectrum of thought. And faced with such diversity, such contradiction even, the question becomes, how do we make sense of it all? How do we evaluate these claims about goodness?
This is where Mortimer Adler's framework becomes really useful again. He provides tools not just for understanding, but for critical evaluation, for rational thought.
Exactly. To handle this diversity requires a structured way of thinking, moving beyond just collecting opinions. Adler proposes what he calls the epistemic ladder, 4 levels of understanding, moving towards wisdom. This helps us assess claims about the good.
Okay, let's climb that ladder. Level 1.
Level 1 is opinion. This is the most basic level. Personal preferences, gut feelings, cultural assumptions, subjective beliefs about what's good. I like this. My family thinks that. It feels right to me. Most everyday arguments stay here.
Prone to bias and contradiction, I imagine.
Highly. Level 2 moves beyond that. It's knowledge. This involves facts, demonstrable, objective facts related to human flourishing, things we can discover through science, observation, history. For example, the biological needs for health, the social conditions required for stability, the psychological effects of trauma. These are factual inputs.
So moving from, I think junk food is good, to scientific evidence shows balanced nutrition is necessary for long-term health.
Precisely. Level 3 is understanding. This is where we integrate. We connect the facts, knowledge, with broader moral principles and theories. We grasp why certain things are good or bad in light of a coherent framework. It's about seeing the relationships between facts, human nature, and ethical concepts.
So understanding why justice is good based on knowledge of human social needs and reasoned principles.
Exactly. And the final level, the peak, is wisdom. This isn't just knowing or understanding, it's application. Judicious application. It's the practical skill of aligning personal action and virtue with the common good and universal principles in complex, real-world situations. It's phronesis again, in a way, knowing the right thing to do at the right time for the right reasons.
That latter provides a great framework for thinking more clearly. But Adler also gives us specific tests, right? Criteria to judge whether a particular theory about the good holds water.
Yes, 3 crucial truth tests. Any comprehensive theory of goodness should ideally pass these. The first is correspondence. Does the theory actually match reality? Does it align with observable human experience and the conditions that demonstrably lead to human flourishing?
So if a theory claims X leads to happiness, but everywhere X is practiced, people are miserable, it fails the correspondence test.
It fails the reality check, yes. The second test is coherence. Is the theory internally consistent? Does it hang together logically? Do its moral claims, its view of human nature, its political implications, and its metaphysical underpinnings form a unified whole without contradicting each other?
For instance, a theory can't claim individual freedom is paramount, but it also demand total state control without being incoherent.
Right. It has to make sense as a system. And the third test is pragmatic. Does it work in practice? When people try to live according to this theory, does it actually lead to tangible well-being, justice, sustainable peace, and a flourishing community? This judges the theory by its fruits, its real-world consequences over time.
Correspondence, coherence, pragmatic, those are robust tests. They force us to connect abstract ideas back to lived reality and practical outcomes.
Which brings us back to Aristotle's point, really. The ultimate testing ground for goodness is often the civic realm. How does it manifest politically? As justice, as welfare, as a functioning society?
Right. The individual good and the common good are intertwined. The book mentions using the aims of the U.S. Constitution's preamble as a kind of modern checklist for civic good.
It does, as one practical example. Unity, justice, domestic tranquility, common defense, general welfare, securing liberty. These represent a concrete framework for evaluating whether a political system or a moral theory contributes to a genuinely good society, where individuals can flourish together. The good life needs the good state.
And beneath specific laws or constitutions, there's the golden rule test. Seems simple, but it's powerful.
Incredibly powerful. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It forces rational reciprocity, asks us to universalize our actions, like Kant's first formula, affirms basic human dignity, and cuts through hypocrisy. Can you rationally will that your proposed action become a universal standard applied even to yourself? It's a fundamental check on self-serving definitions of the good.
This whole process, climbing the epistemic ladder, applying the truth tests, considering civic manifestation, really underscores the need for careful, rational thought to navigate these complex ideas about goodness.
It absolutely does. And that need for synthesis and rational reflection is vital. Just a quick note here for you, our listener. If you appreciate this kind of synthesized knowledge and want to explore more, you might want to check out Mindful Moments. That's our YouTube channel offering AI book analysis, summaries, critiques. It's all designed to inspire reflection and rational thought, much like we're trying to do here.
A great resource for continuing this kind of exploration. Now, we've focused heavily on the Western tradition following the Syntopicon analysis, but it does briefly acknowledge that this quest isn't exclusively Western.
Yes, and it's an important, albeit brief, acknowledgement. The search for the good is universal. The analysis mentions parallels in Eastern philosophies like Taoism and Buddhism.
How do they frame goodness differently?
Often, the emphasis is less on moral commands or achieving a specific state of perfection, and more on harmony, balance, compassion, and non-attachment. Goodness might be seen as aligning with the Tao, the natural flow of existence, or achieving enlightenment through overcoming desire and illusion. It moves away from the strong dualisms good versus evil, God versus world that often characterize Western thought. Goodness is often more relational, more about inner peace and compassionate action.
Interesting. So after tracing this vast arc from forms to function, God to duty, will to life affirmation, and considering how we evaluate it all, what's the final synthesis? Where does this leave us?
Well, the synthesis suggested by this kind of Adlerian approach is that achieving goodness, living well, isn't about picking just one definition. It requires a dynamic integration. It demands discerning truth through reason, yes, but also orienting our love or will correctly.
So combining elements.
Perhaps. Wisdom seems to lie in integrating the upward pull of Platonic contemplation, the practical virtue of Aristotle cultivated in community, and the modern emphasis on autonomy and critical reason into a coherent moral vision. Goodness isn't a static thing we find. It's an ongoing process of aligning who we are internally with the realities of the world and the needs of society.
It's truly staggering, the sheer philosophical effort poured into defining this single idea over millennia. You see these core tensions constantly resurfacing: transcendence versus immanence, duty versus consequence, reason versus passion.
They keep coming back, and that core tension we started with between Plato and Aristotle, perhaps, echoes right through to the modern day, leaving us with a fundamental, enduring question.
And that's the provocative thought we want to leave you, the listener.
Yeah.
Something to really mull over.
The central thread linking the metaphysical heights to ethical practice across Western philosophy really boils down to this. Is goodness ultimately discovered? Is it an objective reality, an eternal truth, a form, a divine law waiting for us to find it, as Plato or Aquinas might argue? Or is goodness created? Is it a product of human will, an autonomous choice made in freedom, an affirmation of life's values, perhaps rejecting external commands, as thinkers like Nietzsche or Sartre would suggest, discovered or created? Your answer to that really shapes everything else, how you define value, how you choose to live.
A profound question indeed. Phenomenal summary of some incredibly deep ideas. We truly hope this exploration helps you to think rationally about these complex systems and their undeniable impact on our world.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the sources.
Click the link on screen for the in-depth book summary. And please subscribe, share, consider purchasing via the link, and always think rationally.